Hello, my name is David Rippey, and I'm a certified hypnotherapist, author, and I enjoy helping people live their best lives. And I do this in a variety of ways. Please check out my website at davidrippey.com and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I was fortunate to be interviewed by Constance Arnold, who is a well regarded radio show host on iHeartRadio, author, and she wanted me to discuss how I moved my life forward after facing shoulders down paralysis after a brutal car accident I was in. Constance wanted me to discuss how I set goals to move my life forward to a career of my choosing and how I eventually found acceptance and freed myself of the suffering that traumatic events can bring. Enjoy.
Everybody, I am back and we have a very special guest today. I'm just going to give a short introduction of who he is, but my very special guest, and you're going to be blessed, is Mr. David Rippey. And David is an international author. He's authored 5 books. He's a speaker, and he really is all about helping people to live their best lives at the age of 25 in the midst of a great career. Dave's life changed dramatically when he was involved in a car accident that left him paralyzed from the shoulders down. But despite all of that, despite that life-altering injury, he has maintained or formulated a vision for his life, and he's going to teach us how to do that today. He continued to spread his message of positivity through writing and speaking engagements, and he believes that there are more miracles to come in his life and works toward new goals and aspirations every day. So, Mr. David Rippey, welcome to the Law of Attraction Radio Network.
Well, thanks, Constance. Thanks for having me. And, I appreciate and admire the work you do. And, there's a lot of good, positive people out there, and you're one of them.
Well, thank you. Well, I was kidding David behind the scenes because we've been trying to do this for a couple of times, but I call it divine timing, David. And I just believe that your story is one for today, and I have lots of questions for you that I believe that will really empower our listeners.
Well, good. You want to go ahead and start with some questions?
I do. Well, David, tell us a little bit about your journey and your accident and your life and how that has impacted you, etc.
Well, Constance, I was, in my early 20s, I was involved in an automobile accident, which left me paralyzed from the shoulders down. And prior to that time, I was a student down in Texas, went to school at Texas A&M University and graduated, and then came back up here in the East Coast and took a job with a Fortune 50 company. And 3 weeks into that new position, I was in the woods. The car was crumpled around me. A friend of mine was driving and hit a dead deer on the road, which threw the car into the woods, and subsequently my neck snapped and I broke my neck. And prior to that, I was pretty athletic. I mean, I could run a mile in 5.5 minutes and bench about 325 pounds. I played sports in high school and intramurals in college. So it was quite a devastating blow to somebody whose life, a lot of it was centered around sports and activities. So from that moment, when I slid down in that car and I couldn't move again, my shoulders or my arms or my legs, it was very surreal. It was almost like I was in a bad dream, and I kept trying to move for about half an hour while my friend went to get help. And I just realized that 30 minutes I was alone in those woods, and the windows were blown out, and the roof was caved in around my head, and it was about cold. It was like early November. So at that moment, I just thought, wow, this is a life-changing event, and it just took some time to move forward after that.
Yeah, and I love your attitude because I've read everything about you, and I've been listening to you, on social media and on YouTube. And so, David, you're just the person for this season. So after your accident, did you set goals? How did you How did you adapt to the change? I guess would be my first question. How did you adjust and adapt to the change, which is what a lot of people are having to do now?
Well, it was quite a moment. I mean, when they got me out of the woods, I had to go through 6 months of rehab and surgery and things like this. And they had to put a steel ring around my head. It was quarter inch, it was drilled in with 1/4 inch screws, which were held in place for 3 months. So, very, very uncomfortable. So I had to go through all this. And the goal was getting out of the hospital. That was really the goal I set first, because I knew that I couldn't move forward in my life if I was surrounded by medical equipment, nurses running in and out all the time. And, I want to get my life back. So I worked to get out of the hospital and rehabs. And once I got out, I was back home again in my parents' house. And I'd only been there 3 weeks. And then I was gone 6 months. And now I'm back now. So what I did, Constance, that you alluded to, I set goals. And the reason I set goals, because I knew where I was. I was at point A, sitting at home, once athletic and walking at 6'2", and now I'm down at 4'8" in a wheelchair and paralyzed. So I'd really set goals, but first I really had to figure out, what can I do? And I knew what I couldn't do. I couldn't do a lot of things. I couldn't drive a truck. I couldn't, I couldn't really be a salesman. It'd be too much running around in a car on the road, and I couldn't drive because of my paralysis. I couldn't be a Navy SEAL, an astronaut, even though that probably wasn't going to happen anyway. But I decided that I wanted to be a money manager. So that seemed like a far away goal. Like, how the heck am I going to do that? And to make it even more difficult was I knew absolutely no one that was in the money management business. I didn't have any friends, family, friends of my parents, or anybody that, could have maybe given me some information. So I had to kind of do it on my own. And this was kind of the dawning of the internet. It's not like it is today, where we go online and find information on anything or videos on anything. So it was more or less a lot of just reading and magazines and, newspapers about, which firms might be hiring. But to get there, I knew I needed to set some goals. I didn't have quite enough education to manage other people's money. I had a Bachelor of Science in economics from Texas A&M, but that wasn't enough to really understand the complexities of, the markets and the world. So I had to go back to school, and I knew that was one goal. So I decided to start taking courses kind of at night, after, at a community college, another university that specialized in like graduate type level courses. So we took some in portfolio management. And another goal I had to set was I needed assistance now. I never needed assistance before. Obviously, besides parents helped me with school and things like that. But now I was physically dependent on people. So I needed to hire people that could go with me to not only help me with my physical needs, but at the same time be able to manage and help me in a high-paced brokerage environment, filling out stock and bond orders and things and talking to clients. So I knew I needed somebody extra special. So I looked around the local colleges and looked for people that, students that had, juniors and seniors in college that were into finance and accounting and, things like this. They hired them, and then they were able to transition with my healthcare. My healthcare wasn't that big a deal. Even though I'm paralyzed from the neck down, the healthcare really involved being my hands, being my feet, going around the office, dealing with things, driving my van. And that was another goal that I needed. I needed a large transport vehicle. My chair with me in it weighs about 400 and something pounds. And, you just couldn't drive around in a car anymore. I couldn't transfer because I couldn't use my legs. So I had to have a car with a big heavy duty lift to be able to lift the chair up, get inside that van, and get me to the office. So those were 3 out of the 4 goals. The 4th goal was I knew I needed work experience. I'd only been out of college a couple of weeks. Looking on my resume, here's what, not a lot of jobs, as most college students don't have, unless they get a good internship. So I knew I needed more work-related experience. So I took a job at Vanguard Group near me, which had helped them in their marketing department, talking to clients about mutual funds, about different funds, and why we buy this equity fund or this bond fund, and how the world events might be affecting their investments. So these are the kind of things we learn. So when I had all that together, I'd also acquired my Series 7 license, which is the broker's license required to trade stocks and bonds. And I got that at the Vanguard Group. So on my resume now, what it showed was this. It not only had I done what I needed to do behind the scenes, in other words, getting the van, getting the right assistants trained to help me with physical and financial work needs. But at this point, I also had more education. So I started on my resume. It showed that I was working toward like a master's degree. It showed that I had industry-related work experience because I was working at Vanguard, which is the largest mutual fund company in the world now. So all the people out there I was going to apply to saw that on there. I also behind the scenes worked on some interviews. I think it's important to practice before you go to an interview. I mean, the interviewers today have gotten tougher than they were back then. Back then, it was a question like, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses?
Right.
We can always take a weakness and say, well, I tend to work too hard sometimes, which really makes it look like a strength. But today, the questions have, got a lot more complex. And I think for the person out interviewing, I think it's very important that they practice question and answer sessions with interviewers. So those were the goals I had set. And after setting those goals of getting assistants in place that could help me, getting the van in place that could drive me, getting the education in place so I knew what I had a better idea what to talk about. And fourth, showing that employers that, even though I'm sitting here in a wheelchair, paralyzed from the shoulders down, that I think I can help your company and be a contributor to the bottom line and help bring some money in, new clients. And one thing I did on my resume, Constance, in the cover letter, I didn't make any reference of my disability. I didn't tell any employers. I didn't say, hey guys, I've done a lot since I've been hurt. It's been about 6 months to a year now, but I am paralyzed. I just wanted you to know that. And I didn't think that was important. I thought it was important to let the interviewers see a resume that showed work experience, showed that I was pursuing a higher education, which they'd like to see, and that I was ready and able to go to work and this, that. So when I showed up for the interviews, they came in. Here I come in there to see a guy, in a wheelchair, looking, the tie on and all that, of course, but. Some of them were a little shocked, and I found it was important for anybody out there listening that might be looking to interview and they might have a disability or, have more issues than others as far as, appearances or whatever. I explained the mechanisms of my chair. I have a sip and puff chair, which means I have this tube type thing in front of my face, which I can blow in and make the chair go left or right or backwards or forward. So it's very handy. But to somebody just looking at it that aren't aware of this type of technology, they simply see something that looks like I'm going to take a breath or a drink out of.
Right.
So I found, Constance, it was very important to let any prospective employers up front know that this is a chair. This is what this thing's for. This is not oxygen. I'm fine. And I'm not going to drink out of it. It makes the chair move. So once I got that out of their minds, I can bring them back to focus on why I wanted a job there. So I think it's important when we're out in the world, and I think it's good for all of us to realize, your listeners, is that if there's something that might distract, if there's something that might draw an audience or a person's attention away from where we want to focus, then it's good to kind of bring their mind back in a way that, kind of answers those questions they're thinking about at the time they're staring at you.
So let me ask you this, so we're going to bring it back to what's happening today to a lot of folk. Maybe they've had a life-altering experience of being furloughed. Maybe they are a small business owner. Maybe they are working from home and trying to, really teach their kids virtually at the same time. So are you saying that even in the midst of that, there's something on the inside of them that could push them to begin to set daily goals?
Exactly, Constance. I think, we have, a sad situation around the world with COVID-19 today. I mean, obviously, there's been a lot of businesses affected, from retail establishments to restaurants to airlines to hotels. I mean, the list is endless. what I find is that that's a situation that has impacted some to a greater degree than others. Some people have lost their lives through this. Some people have lost loved ones. Others have lost businesses. But Constance, yes, I think in any circumstance that we're going to face, and as humans, we're going to face a lot of challenges. We're going to face a lot of unexpected events as we go through our lives. And I think what I found for me was that sitting back and starting a meditation practice probably about 8, 10 years ago has helped me to be able to sit back and maybe analyze things in maybe a way that's maybe a little more objective, a little less where my own thoughts, perceptions might cloud the way forward. So I found the best thing to do if we use it, I used it in the hospital to help me through it. I use creative imagery. And I think if we can look at, these tough times, I mean, people are struggling, people are hurting now, whether it's financially or, through the loss of loved ones or so. What I would tell them to do is I would really probably take the time to understand more about meditation. Find out why they thought it was so well. Why Buddha, when they asked him, they said, what have you gained from meditation? He goes, it's not what I've gained, it's what I've lost. I've lost stress. I've lost anxiety. I have lost fear. And I think if we all sit back and realize that we're immortal beings, we're God, we have souls, we're divine, and sit back, separate ourselves from our issues at hand, hold them at a distance, don't absorb them. And that's the key. I think when I face challenges going forward, it didn't matter if it was a wheelchair was broken or an assistant couldn't make it in. What I found is we hold the challenge, hold that trauma at a distance, don't absorb it, and find ways to solve it by being able to look at it objectively. But if we allow it to enter our world, if we allow it to absorb our lives, getting over that stress, trauma, and depression over that event is not going to help us move forward any faster. Hold that event at a distance. Keep that anxiety and stress at a minimum through meditation. I think we can all move forward through COVID and other events we'll face.
I love that. So you mentioned creative visualization. Expound on that, and how did you use it, and how can listeners implement that principle in their lives?
Well, to give you one example, when I was in the hospital, like I mentioned, I was paralyzed. I had a steel ring around my head, which was very uncomfortable. I mean, literally you're resting the back of your head on screws. They're drilling your skull. So sleep was very hard to come by. So what I did was, and another thing that happened was I didn't really want to sleep because it was a new situation. They were coming in and out with different suggestions or operations, and I did not want to sleep. I wanted to be awake and cognizant, before something else happened, maybe a little bit prepared. But what happened one night for about a month straight, what happened is with this injury, your temperatures spike at night. So what that means is my temperature would rise from about 103 to 104 degrees every single night around 7 o'clock. And that's just some part of the injury that I had no idea about, but it happened. So sleep deprivation and higher temperatures started leading to hallucinations during the day sometimes, where I would wake up suddenly after just drifting off for seconds, and I'd see the clock spinning backwards on the wall. I would see myself somersaulting 3 times in bed. And these were frightening events, but then it would instantly fade. I'd have my lucidity back. And then I thought, wow, I don't like that. That's never happened in my life. And losing control of my mind with these strange visualizations I don't need. So one night every night for about a month, to bring the temperatures down, they would have to pack my body in ice. So they would put about 25 ice bags on me. They would cover that with an ice blanket, and to bring my temperatures from 103 down to, something that wouldn't be destructive to my brain or my body, down to 99, 98, that range. So they'd have to do that. Every 2 hours, they'd replace these ice bags. So one night they would file out, 2 hours later, come back, do the ice bags. So one night I was just laying there, and this is where the creative visualization came to me, was every night my mind would spin. It would just start spinning like I was on a lathe, like I was blasted off into space, and that was because of 103, 104 degree temps, and it's just what happened. So one night, for whatever reason, I visualized this large map of the United States in my mind. And for some reason, there was a train that was here like outside of Philadelphia on the East Coast. And I visualized this train going across country all the way to San Francisco. Now, the reason I picked San Francisco was I had worked there for about 6 months, about a year earlier in between college semesters. So what happened was when this train, with my mind spinning, I noticed the train was pretty much the wheels were spinning at the same speed as my mind. So in my mind, I came up with that visualization to, if I could slow that train down from going from Philadelphia all the way across the country to San Francisco, if I could slow those wheels down and stop that train by the time it got to San Francisco, I could regain control. So that's what I felt. That's what I felt in my mind. So I would see myself inside the train as the conductor, and I would see myself then looking down, flying way above the train, looking down at this huge map of the U.S. So I saw myself, whether after great concentration over a course of about probably half an hour to an hour, that these wheels were slowing down. So I'm seeing this old locomotive coming across the country, first blazing out of Philadelphia like a rocket sled on wheels, seeing it slowing down through Ohio. And once I got to Nevada, I knew I didn't have a lot of time left. So I saw it coming through Nevada, going into California, and I started doubling down my concentration to slow those wheels down. And what was interesting, Constance, as those wheels slowed down, I felt my mind slowing down as well. It wasn't spinning quite as much. So we finally arrived at San Francisco. I stopped the train about 50 yards past, ran back to the station, and then bang, my mind was totally back, and I never hallucinated the rest of my life. So that was my first experience with creative imagery. But I found now, even looking at being a stockbroker, a money manager, sitting at home paralyzed, knowing I'm at point A and I got to get to point B, and I know point B is on the other side of some very dark and nebulous woods. We don't know what's in those woods, but we have to get through it. So I found setting those goals helps. And I think if all of us look at it, if we have an event in our lives that changes our career, we lose that restaurant we've had, just because of this virus, for example. If we lose our jobs, what we want to do is like I did. I didn't have any experience whatsoever, knew nobody in the field. You want to set the goals. First, pick that place you want to be. What job do I want? To keep it realistic, because there's a lot of competition out there. And then work backwards from that, finding those steps backwards to where you're sitting now. And set those goals, and they're stepping stones, and fine tune them. I didn't hire the perfect assistant over a month or two period. It took about 6 months to get it all together. It took, of course, 6 months to a year to take the right courses. So we have to have patience on our journey too. And Confucius said, it doesn't matter how slow you go, just don't stop. So
I love that.
Yes. And every day, and I'll tell you another good one of Constance you might like, but every day, let's set goals. Let's work on little goals within our larger goal. And I think if we do that, I think we can find ourselves making progress and moving beyond that point where we feel stuck, where we feel depressed, where we're not happy, and change our lives for the better. Another thing quote I really like is Dr. Martin Luther King. And he said, faith is taking that first step, even when you don't see the whole staircase. So I think if we build our goals properly, we won't fall through that staircase, and we'll find ourselves being able to make it to the top of whatever mountain or area we want to accomplish.
I love that. So David, were you mad at God when you had your experience? And how can people move away from anger, resentment, fear, and move toward faith, toward the goals or the unlimited possibilities that are out there for them?
Well, Constance, to tell you the truth, what I found is all through my journey, of course, at first we wonder, why me? Why was I the one hurt when my friend wasn't? Why did I move up here from Houston when I could have stayed there? We all look at different things and whys, and we look at the past that we've chosen or the past we end up on unexpectedly, like my car accident. And what we got to learn and what we're going to find out is that God does not do this to us. Yeah. We take challenges of our own. Was the accident a total accident? Well, there's no such thing as time. We only know that in our dimension. what we got to look at is, without getting too complex here, I think the main thing to consider is this, is that we are going to face constant challenges. Well, that is how we grow and understand and learn through experience. It's only by getting back, falling down and getting back up there, we're going to learn how to get up. So I think the challenges we all face are going to be different. Some are going to be horrible, but there's a lot of people out there that have much worse injuries than me. They have a harder time. They might have my injury and be blind as well. I mean, that takes a really tough soul to go through that type of existence in life. But what I found is that, we are going to have challenges. How well we respond to those challenges. If we allow ourselves to get bogged down in sadness, it's going to take us that much longer to accomplish. So we just have to face it. We're here on earth. We're going to have challenges. God is not doing this to us. These are things that are kind of in our path of learning and understanding as souls as we progress. So I think we don't blame people. I mean, obviously I had a friend in the accident. I could have blamed him for hitting the dead deer. Even though he didn't see it, it was foggy out and it was an accident. I think if we just kind of say, hey, let's move beyond. Let's don't cast blame. But let's see what we can show others, where we can go from where we are now in a tough situation, whether with a lost business, a lost loved one, a lost ability to move our own limbs. Let's go forward and see what we can make of this. Let's rise from the ashes, recreate ourselves, and come back stronger and more and wiser than we were.
You're amazing. In one of your books, you have a chapter on healing with hypnosis. Explain, are you a hypnotherapist?
Yes, I am, Constance.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm actually a certified hypnotherapist. And what's interesting about that, which amazes me, is that it first started out for me that I wasn't a certified, but I'd always wondered about life after death and things like that and all that. So I kind of delved into this a little bit and learned a lot about life after death and near-death experiences, and always found that fascinating. People going to the light and feeling that love and bliss on the other side, sometimes being snapped back down in their bodies, not leaving the earth because they're not finished yet. So what I did was I did that. But then I have an assistant come over one night who couldn't move. Her neck was frozen, her shoulders were locked in place, and just a lot of pain from a sprained neck. So she goes, David, I don't think I can help you tonight. And I said, wow, that doesn't sound good, because it's too late to call anyone else for backup. So what I ended up doing was I said, you know what, let's try hypnosis. So she laid down, and about 45, I talked her down. The pain's going away. You're not feeling it. You're feeling more relaxed, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we brought her down in a hypnotic state, and had her sit back up. 45 minutes later, she's touching her arms with her back with her hands, and just looking at me kind of incredulously that something like that could even happen. But she lost all her pain. So what I find is that hypnosis is a very powerful tool, and I've been using it myself for probably about 10, 12 years now, to where I've helped people with pain. And, beyond what I do, just to show you how widespread it's become. And if we look at the Veterans Administration, for example, they've been introducing hypnosis to their burn victims that have been unfortunate, maybe an IED, maybe something like this, for the poor warriors that have been hurt. So they've used hypnosis on burn victims, and they find that the burn will heal 40% faster and with about 50% less infection rate by just introducing hypnosis into the regular routine. That's all.
Wow.
So I found that fascinating. So anyway, the girl, like I said, got up 45 minutes later, lifted me up like I was a feather, put me on my bed, transferred me, and it was amazing. So we use hypnosis for healing. I find that, if we have stress, if we have anxiety, if we have insomnia, if we are in fear, if we have chronic pain, hypnosis can work very well for all these things. So I've used hypnosis regularly, and on my website, I can mention it, I guess, davidrippey.com. I put on 14 recordings from covering all those things I just mentioned, from insomnia to pain to stress, anxiety. And I think that what we'll find is that if people take the time to listen to some of these guided meditations, that they'll be able to do it on their own. Anybody can do it. and allow yourself to go down into a nice relaxed state. And that state is pretty much called the theta state. There's four states of relaxation. One's the beta state, where you're not relaxed. You're like what we're doing now, Constance. We're talking, we're working, we're thinking. Alpha is kind of that state to where, you might be looking at a fish tank, very relaxing. You're looking at a fire, you're watching the waves crash on the beach. That's an alpha state. Theta is that state we've experienced right before we fall asleep, where we're sort of in that in-between realm. And the same with waking up. When we come out of a dream, we come out of a deep sleep, and we wake up, the alarm goes off, bang, we turn it off. That's that theta state. So the best time to take advantage of this, obviously, is we're in the theta state, because a lot of us obviously don't have time during the day to sit around and meditate. So when you're laying there, instead of hitting that snooze alarm for an extra 5 minutes, what I suggest is take that time, relax, allow your body just to relax. And what they find at Harvard, if we just do mindful meditation studies, we're talking of only 20 minutes a day for 6 weeks. When they did MRI studies, they looked at the participants prior to the meditation study for 6 weeks, 20 minutes a day, that's all. And they found that their brain matter, their gray area of their brain, as well as the glial cells, expanded from only 6 weeks of meditation. So I think what it'll do two things for you. One, it will move your life forward. And second, it will find you that inner peace that's hard to find in today's world, with everything going on.
Well, that's so good. I know with the law of attraction, a lot of people understand that, whatever they're believing for, or whatever their desired manifestation is, that it's just before they go to sleep. If they would get in the theta state, I think is the correct one, that and live from the end of their desires, it really imprints their subconscious more powerfully.
Constance, you're exactly right. And what's interesting about the law of attraction, if we look at what rules our world, it doesn't, or I should say universe, because they're the universal laws. It doesn't matter what religion you are. It doesn't matter what political party you belong to. It doesn't matter the color of our skin. It doesn't matter what we like to eat or drink, what dogs we like. What the universal laws does, it runs all our lives. And the law of attraction falls under that third law called the law of vibration. So everything vibrates. And when we throw out positive thoughts into the universe, we send love out, send out peace, send out, areas that are war torn or suffering worse than we are as far as starvation and such. If we throw out these positive vibes, these vibrations that, kind of quell some of the negativity, quell some of the fear on TV. And I think that's what the best thing to do is, we all can turn on our TVs, and normally about 90% of the programming is not very good, not very positive. If we turn that TV off, do something we enjoy to do, find a creative outlet during this time of uncertainty. And I like to look at it as like a hurricane, or, we're in a hurricane. We can either be caught up in it, or we can stay in the middle of the sweet spot and just kind of float around and visualize everything going on around us without allowing us to absorb us or sweep us into it. So that's the key. You want to maintain that calm, that presence, and let things swirl around us as they will. That's what life on earth is. It's a lot of challenges, a lot of events, a lot of unexpected things. And if we can allow ourselves to stay in that sweet spot by staying more relaxed, go out in nature, take a walk, breathe the air, exercise, run if you can do it. Take advantage of these moments. Do things you enjoy to do. Find your creative outlets. We all have things we like to do. It could be painting, it could be drawing, it could be writing, it could be, running, whatever. But find these outlets, do them, come back, occasionally sit back in that theta state, early morning, late at night, and just sit back and just kind of relax. Allow your body just to wind down. And you'll see remarkable improvements. And at that time, when you wind down, that's the time to say, maybe I'd like to switch careers. The business I'm running now is getting impacted by COVID. Let me maybe think of maybe doing this. And then in your mind, picture that goal, that big event, that career move. and then work your way backwards. What little goals or steps do I have to set to be competitive enough, to get a job in this field, to realize that dream? And you got to be realistic. I mean, I think some people aren't as realistic as they maybe should be. In other words, there might be a situation where, they have that dream to own their own business, their own restaurant. They got to borrow lots of money to do it. And, next thing you know, we get smacked with COVID unexpectedly in February. And all those poor guys that started their restaurant or business a year earlier are struggling now. So we have to look and say, hey, if we have, once we get through this COVID situation, is my business going to return to where it was? Do I need to consider ways to add to the business to make it more fit in with today's paradigm of Zoom type behavior? What do I need to do with this brick and mortar building? Do I really need to have the employees here, or should we have it at home and Zoom and, raise the bottom line numbers up by not paying the rent anymore on this building we don't really need? We can't go to anyway with COVID. So I think there's things we need to look at. I think if we can objectively sit back, find that theta state, allow our bodies and minds to relax, I think we can move forward. And we just got to not allow the event to absorb us. We can't allow it to just run into our hearts and sit there and fester. We need to move the negative energy out of us. We need to exert that positive energy. We need to reach out, pray to, the gods in your religion. Allow yourself to relax. Bring in that golden light. Bring those angels in. Bring those spirit guides. Bring the people in them that it can help us move forward in this 30-dimensional world we live in. And I think by adopting that type of approach, setting goals, and goals make us happy. If we have a goal and we accomplish a little bit of that goal that day, we don't feel as stagnant. We don't feel as sluggish as we do if we just sit around and, try to drown our sorrows in the latest Netflix series or something.
Oh, that ain't nothing but the truth. This is my last question to you, David. What do you do on days, or do you ever have days where you're like, ugh, this is too much, or I'm just not motivated, or what is life about? Do you ever have those days? And if you do, what do
I
you
sure
do?
do. I wouldn't sound like a real person if I did. It would sound like, who is this robot we're talking to? Somebody programming on positive, that's the only speed he knows. No, Constance, no. I was bored yesterday. I felt bored.
Oh,
I mean,
did you?
the summer was winding down. Labor Day's over. I didn't get to go down. We a lot of times, those that live, outside of Philadelphia, we tend to go to the Jersey Shore, the Delaware beaches, Maryland. Get out to the water, kind of like you guys might do to the Gulf. Get down there, enjoy it a little bit. I like boats and water, and that was curtailed this year because of the virus and not wanting to stay in hotels and take a chance. So that made it more difficult because it's about 2 hours away. It's not, it's what you can do it in one day, but it's not as fun as if you just spread it out over 2 days or 3 days. So yeah, I was a little bored, and I find I didn't feel like, I thought, what, I'm bored, but let's do something. That's a state of mind.
Mm-hmm.
Let's change this a little bit. So then I went back and I dug up a book that I'd started about a couple of years, 2 or 3 years ago. I only had about 40, 50 pages into it. And, I thought, let's go open that up. Let's update it to at least today's date, maybe read through it a little bit. Maybe even we only had a sentence or two. We don't even have to write a whole paragraph or a whole chapter. But let's just do that. And like I said, Confucius said, it doesn't matter how slow you go. Some days you're going to drag. Some days you're just not going to feel like doing anything. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. Our bodies need time to relax. We can't constantly be working or, trying to calculate positive goals and ideas. So it's good to sit back and, that's when you take that time, that walk in the woods, that wheel around the neighborhood, breathe in that air, and, allow yourself that time to relax. Work, earth, living here on earth isn't all work all the time, but, play. But I think the main thing is we don't want to overplay. We got to keep it balanced. Mm-hmm. What I mean by that is like what Buddha said, take the middle path. Don't be the guy that sits around depressed and maybe turning to harmful substances to get through that day. Don't be the guy that's constantly working so hard you just don't really smell the rose and enjoy life or understand anything beyond your job. find that place in the middle to where you kind of, relax, but you can also get work done and just keep moving forward, not living at one extreme or the other.
I love it. I love it. So, David, you're just a wealth of knowledge. I'm so glad we connected. Tell listeners your website. How can they get your books? Are you available to speak? Do you coach, etc.?
Well, Constance, my website is davidrippy.com, DAVID, Rippy, RIPPY.com. They can go on there. Like I mentioned, the meditations or guided meditations are free. Go on there if you have pain, if you have insomnia, if you have fear, anxiety, or if you just want to rest your mind and try to think of things, use one of those. The books are on there as well. You can also get them on Amazon. That's probably your easiest, best bet. They're on Barnes & Noble. Amazon's easier. There's different shows we get involved in. I do coaching, but more on a group basis.
I
And
got you.
I have more time for that now. I do hypnosis. I do it, for pain and things like that. That's not as much on an individual basis, but somebody's out there really badly suffering, send me an email. And if you've got a traumatic disease or something or cancer, reach out and we'll see what we can do.
Thank you so much. Hey, David, this was worth the wait,
No,
worth
I'm
the
definitely.
worth the rescheduling, and you've just shared a wealth of information. And listeners, I'm going to strongly encourage you to make sure that you visit David's website. I love your spirit. I love your energy, David, and you are a blessing to the world.
Well, you are too, Constance, because through your station, obviously, you reach a lot of people and bring a lot of love and hope.
I do. That's what it's all about. And everybody, remember to visit my website, fulfillingyourpurpose.com. And as I say every week, you may not know it or even feel it, but you are surrounded by a loving, giving, supporting spirit. And I want you to think, feel, believe, and say something good is going to happen to me and through me for others this week. Have a great week, everybody.